Look, I'm not saying the entire Galactic Council was composed of idiots. That would be unfair. Inaccurate, even. They were highly intelligent beings who'd mastered faster-than-light travel, quantum communications, and had somehow managed to agree on a universal currency that didn't immediately crash into hyperinflation. No, calling them idiots would be wrong. According to YouTube analytics, 99.3% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. Calling them catastrophically unprepared for humans, however, that's just objective fact. The whole disaster, and I use that term with the fondness of someone who watched it unfold from a safe distance with popcorn, started on Station Kepler 442, or as the humans called it, that weird space truck stop where the coffee tastes like sadness and the vending machines are sentient. Humans had been part of the galactic community for approximately 7 standard cycles, which is just long enough for everyone to stop panicking every time a human did something insane and start expecting it instead. Enter Marcus Webb, agricultural specialist, amateur xenobiologist, and according to his file, a man of reasonable caution. That last part was clearly written by someone who'd never met Marcus Webb, or any human, really. Marcus had been assigned to Station Kepler 442 to help establish sustainable food production for the mixed species population. Simple enough job. Grow some vegetables. Make sure the Xanthorian's fungal gardens didn't poison the Vrelian livestock. Convince the humans to stop trying to eat things that were technically classified as hazardous materials. Standard stuff. What wasn't standard was the Karthics. The Karthics were apex predators from a death world called Vexeron Prime, which was exactly as pleasant as it sounds. 8 legs, crystalline exoskeleton, mandibles that could shear through starship hull plating, and a pack mentality that made Earthwolves look like introverted librarians. They were also, and this is important, absolutely off-limits as far as civilian contact went. Because here's the thing about apex predators from death worlds. They don't really do the whole coexistence thing. The Galactic Council had learned this the hard way when a Karthic's pack had wiped out an entire mining colony after someone made the grievous error of threatening a juvenile. The species was dangerous, territorial, and operated on social hierarchies so complex that 3 different universities had given up trying to map them. So naturally, when a Karthic's cub, probably 8 months old and already the size of a particularly ambitious Ottoman, somehow ended up in the agricultural bay of Station Kepler 442. The proper protocol was to evacuate everyone, seal the sector, and call in the professionals. Marcus Webb, who had been elbow-deep in hydroponic tomatoes when the alarm went off, did not evacuate. To be fair to Marcus, he didn't realize what the alarm was for. The station's alert system had 12 different warning tones, and he'd never bothered learning which was which. Could be a fire. Could be a hull breach. Could be someone trying to microwave fish in the communal kitchen again. Hard to say. So he kept working, humming something that sounded vaguely like old Earth music, completely oblivious to the fact that a juvenile apex predator was currently stalking through the vertical grow towers about 30 meters away. The cub, who would later be designated K472 by very nervous scientists and Bitey by Marcus, was having what could only be described as a terrible day. She'd been separated from her pack during a transfer, ended up in a cargo container marked agricultural supplies, and had spent the last 6 hours in darkness, confused and increasingly angry. Now she was out, surrounded by strange smells and stranger sounds, and her juvenile instincts were screaming at her to establish dominance, find pack, or failing both of those, bite something until it made sense. She found Marcus kneeling beside a row of nutrient tubes, completely absorbed in adjusting pH levels and muttering about nitrogen balance. To her predator brain, he was exactly the right size to be a threat. Not pack, not prey, but something in between. Something that needed to be tested. She approached with the stealth that came naturally to her species, crystalline legs making almost no sound on the metal decking. 10 meters. 5. 3. Marcus hummed, adjusted a valve, and reached for his diagnostic pad. The cub bit his boot. Not hard, mind you. This was a test bite. A "what are you and what will you do about it" bite. Her mandibles closed on the reinforced toe of his work boot with enough force to dent plasteel, but not enough to actually damage it. Marcus looked down. The cub looked up. There was a moment, and I think this is important, where the entire future of human-Carthix relations hung in the balance. Because a Carthix test bite is serious business. In their pack dynamics, this was a juvenile establishing boundaries, determining hierarchy, figuring out if you were pack-worthy or just another obstacle to be ignored or eliminated. The proper response, according to the 17-volume series on Carthix social behavior, was to remain absolutely still, avoid eye contact, and wait for the cub to lose interest. Any aggressive response would be met with actual violence. Any fearful response would mark you as prey. Marcus Webb, who had not read the 17-volume series and wouldn't have cared if he had, looked at this crystalline nightmare puppy attached to his boot and said, "Oh, so we're playing that game, are we?" And then he bit back. Not the cub, obviously. He wasn't that insane. He leaned down and closed his teeth on the cub's nearest leg, not hard enough to damage the exoskeleton, but firmly enough that the cub definitely felt it. The cub froze. Every single one of her eyes, and she had 8 of them, went wide. Marcus let go and went back to his pH meters. Somewhere in the station security center, the Carthix behavioral specialist who was monitoring the situation via emergency cameras made a sound that her translator rendered as "error, cannot process, error." The station commander, a Vrelian named Tex, who'd seen his share of human nonsense, just put his head in his hands. The cub, meanwhile, was experiencing something her species didn't often encounter: genuine confusion. See, in Carthix pack dynamics, the only beings that bite back at juveniles are pack members. Specifically, pack members teaching boundaries. It's how parents discipline cubs, how adults correct youngsters, how the whole social structure maintains itself. But this wasn't a Carthix. This was a soft, fragile-looking biped who smelled wrong and moved wrong, and yet had just performed the exact, correct disciplinary response to a test bite. The cub's brain, such as it was, arrived at the only logical conclusion: pack. What followed was, depending on your perspective, either adorable or absolutely terrifying. The cub settled down next to Marcus, legs folded under her crystalline body, and watched him work. Every few minutes, she'd test him again. A gentle bite on the ankle, a nip at his trouser leg. Once, memorably, she dragged his tool bag 3 meters away just to see what he'd do. Marcus, displaying either remarkable patience or severe head trauma from some earlier incident, treated her exactly like someone might treat a misbehaving puppy. The ankle bites got a light tap on her carapace and a no. The trouser nips got ignored. The tool bag theft got him gently bumping her out of the way with his hip while he retrieved it. Plus, a nice try, kid. And each time, the cub's certainty grew. Pack. This was definitely pack. By the time station security finally organized a response team, Marcus had finished his work and the cub had fallen asleep with her head on his boot. The response team, composed of 3 security officers in full combat armor and a very nervous Karthik specialist named Dr. Xyloth, came around the corner to find Marcus calmly checking his data pad, while occasionally reaching down to scratch behind what might have been the cub's auditory sensors. Dr. Xyloth's translator couldn't handle the sound she made. It came out as a long string of error messages. "Oh, hey," Marcus said, looking up. "Is this little guy supposed to be here? She's been following me around for the last hour." Little guy. The security chief, a Threxian who'd served in 3 wars and considered himself unshakable, repeated the word slowly. "That is a juvenile Karthix." "Yeah, I figured she was something exotic. Haven't seen her species before. She's pretty friendly once you establish boundaries." Marcus gave the cub another scratch. She made a sound like rocks in a tumbler. "Content rocks. Establish boundaries?" Dr. Xyloth had progressed from error messages to speaking in sentence fragments. "You established boundaries with a Karthix juvenile." "Well, yeah. She kept biting my boots. Had to let her know that wasn't okay." Marcus frowned. "Should I not have? Is that, like, culturally insensitive or something?" The security chief decided this was a perfect time to sit down on the floor. Just right there. On the metal decking, because standing was suddenly too much effort. Dr. Xyloth approached carefully, mandibles clicking in agitation. "Human Marcus, I need you to listen very carefully. That juvenile has now imprinted on you as Pack. Do you understand what that means? She thinks I'm her family. In the most literal, binding, impossible to undo sense, yes. Karthik's Pack bonds are neurochemical, permanent. She will follow you, defend you, attempt to feed you. If you are threatened, she will kill whatever threatens you. When she reaches adulthood in approximately 3 standard cycles, she will weigh 800 kilograms and be capable of destroying light vehicles with her mandibles." Marcus processed this. "So, I have a pet?" "No, not a pet. Pets can be rehomed. Pets can be trained to accept new owners. Karthik's Pack bonds are eternal. If you attempt to abandon her, she will tear through station bulkheads to follow you. If she is forcibly separated, she will refuse food until she dies. You are now, in every way that matters to her species, her Pack." "Oh." Marcus looked down at the sleeping cub. "That's a bit intense." "A bit intense? A bit intense." Dr. Xyloth's translator was smoking slightly. "Human, do you understand that what you have accidentally accomplished is something that has eluded xenobiologists for 2 centuries? The Karthix do not bond with other species. They do not allow close contact. They certainly do not accept non-Karthix as Pack. It is considered impossible." "Huh." Marcus scratched the cub again. "So, is this like a problem? Am I in trouble?" The security chief, still sitting on the floor, started laughing. Not happy laughter. The kind of laughter that happens when reality stops making sense and your brain decides humor is the only viable response. Here's what happened next. Because the ramifications were, as the humans would say, absolutely bonkers. First, the station commander had to explain to the Galactic Council that, yes, a human had accidentally pack-bonded with a species that was supposed to be unbondable. And no, they couldn't just separate them without potentially killing the juvenile. And yes, this meant they now had a ticking time bomb of a predator living in Agricultural Bay 3. Second, the galactic scientific community lost its collective mind. Dr. Xyloth's initial report was rejected by 3 journals on the grounds that it was obviously fiction. When security footage was provided, 2 of those journals published emergency special editions, and the 3rd folded entirely because its editor refused to believe the evidence. Third, Marcus had to attend a hastily arranged seminar on Karthik's care and feeding, which he approached with the same bemused patience he'd shown the cub. The specialists giving the seminar kept using phrases like catastrophic digestive requirements and mandatory protein intake of 70 kilograms per week, and absolutely do not allow near small children. Marcus took notes and asked if the cub liked vegetables. The specialists developed stress ulcers. Fourth, and this is where it got interesting, the adult Karthik's pack that the cub had been separated from showed up at the station. Now, let me paint you a picture of what a full Karthik's pack looks like. Imagine your worst nightmare decided to have babies with a military strike force. And then those babies got really good at coordination tactics. A pack usually consists of 10 to 15 adults, each weighing around 800 kilograms, each capable of running at speeds that made station security protocols look quaint. They docked their ship, which wasn't a ship so much as a barely controlled weapon pointed at the station, and demanded their juvenile back. The station commander, Tex, who was by this point considering early retirement, tried to explain that the juvenile had pack bonded and couldn't be moved without psychological damage. The pack alpha, a scarred veteran named Threxak, who looked like he'd fought every war in galactic history simultaneously, responded by smashing his mandibles together in a way that translated roughly to, "Give us the juvenile, or we will discuss this more violently." Marcus, who'd been listening to this exchange via communicator while feeding the cub something the dietary specialists had assured him was appropriate, decided to simplify matters. He walked right into the docking bay, the cub trotting along beside him like the universe's most dangerous puppy, and faced down the pack. Security later described this as the stupidest act of bravery in station history. Threxak took one look at the human, then at the juvenile pressed against the human's leg, then back at the human. His mandibles opened in what might have been shock or might have been preparation to bite this tiny soft thing in half. Marcus waved. "Hey, you must be her family. She's a good kid. Been teaching her not to bite boots." The entire pack went still. See? Here's something the scientists hadn't fully explained to Marcus. When a Karthik's juvenile bonds with someone outside the pack, there are two possible responses. Either the pack kills the outsider for stealing their young, or the pack accepts the outsider as auxiliary pack. There's no middle ground, and the determination of which response is appropriate depends entirely on how the juvenile behaves around the outsider. The cub, demonstrating perfect timing, bit Marcus's boot. Not hard, just a testing bite. Marcus reached down and gently bumped her head. "What did we talk about?" The cub made the rock tumbler sound and settled down, eyes fixed on Marcus with obvious contentment. Threxak's mandibles clicked, then clicked again. The sounds he made were too complex for the translator, but the body language was pretty clear. He approached Marcus slowly, circled him once, then twice, examining from every angle. Marcus, displaying either incredible courage or incredible stupidity, historians are still debating, stood perfectly still and let it happen. Finally, Threxak made a sound that the translator rendered as "Pack bond confirmed. Status, auxiliary pack, welcome." And then he bit Marcus on the shoulder. Not hard enough to break skin, but definitely hard enough that Marcus yelped and stumbled back. "Ow, what the heck, man?" The entire pack made the rock tumbler sound. All of them. It was, Marcus later realized, laughter. Threxak's translator crackled to life. "You bite juvenile for discipline. I bite you for discipline. You are pack now. Very small pack. Very soft, but pack." "I'm not sure I consented to this," Marcus muttered, rubbing his shoulder. "Pack does not require consent. Pack requires action. You acted as pack. You are pack. This is logic. And that, ladies and gentlemen, and assorted galactic citizens, is how humanity accidentally became the first species to integrate with the Carthix packs. Not through diplomacy, not through careful negotiation, not through the 17-volume behavioral series, through one agricultural specialist who saw a cub biting his boot and responded with the timeless human wisdom of, if something bites you, bite it back. The aftermath was, predictably, chaotic. Marcus became the subject of approximately 40,000 research papers, 12 documentaries, and one very unfortunate romance novel that the publisher insisted was speculative xenobiology fiction. But everyone knew was just weird. The cub, officially named Calyx, but still called Bitey by Marcus, grew up splitting her time between the station and the pack ship. She learned to help with agricultural work, mostly by standing menacingly near the vertical grow towers and preventing the station's resident pest species from getting brave. She also learned that humans have this bizarre thing called fetch, and became obsessed with it, which led to the surreal sight of an 800-kilogram apex predator carefully carrying a ball back to Marcus and dropping it at his feet. The pack started spending more time at the station, initially to check on Calyx, but eventually because they discovered that humans were weird in interesting ways. They liked that humans didn't run when the Carthix entered a room. They appreciated that humans understood the concept of earned respect rather than assumed deference. And they absolutely loved that humans had invented something called barbecue, which seemed to be the art of applying fire to meat until it became somehow more meat. Dr. Zyloth published so many papers on the Marcus-Calyx bond that she basically retired on the grant money. Her most cited work, Pack Dynamics and Human Behavioral Patterns, Why Biting Back Works and Why That's Terrifying, became required reading in xenobiology programs across the galaxy. Station Kepler 442 became a pilgrimage site for xenobiologists and pack bonding researchers. They'd come expecting profound scientific insights and instead find Marcus in the agricultural bay, arguing with Calyx about whether she's allowed to eat the experimental corn. It's for research, Bitey. Rock tumbler sound. Don't give me that. You had 3 kilos of protein paste this morning. Louder rock tumbler sound. Fine, 1 ear of corn. But you're not getting more, and you have to promise not to tell Dr. Zyloth. Contented rock tumbler sound. And perhaps most importantly, the entire galactic understanding of impossible got slightly redefined. Because if humans could pack bond with the unbondable Carthix, what else might be possible? The council started getting reports. A human mining crew had accidentally befriended a swarm of phase spiders on Terminus Station by sharing their lunch. A human diplomat had resolved a decade-long territorial dispute by challenging both parties to something called a dance-off. A human teenager had taught a crystalline hive mind the concept of memes, and now the entire crystalline collective communicated primarily in what appeared to be jokes. Humans, it turned out, had this absolutely infuriating ability to look at things the galaxy had decided were fixed truths and just casually ignore them. Not out of disrespect or ignorance, but out of this bizarre optimism that said, well, maybe we should try anyway. 5 cycles after the boot-biting incident, Marcus was promoted to Chief of Interspecies Agricultural Relations, a position that was created specifically for him, and mostly seemed to involve him traveling to various stations with Calyx and teaching people how to grow vegetables while being menaced by an apex predator. He gave a speech at the Galactic Council once, at their request, about the secrets of pack bonding with impossible species. His entire speech was, I don't know, man. Just treat them like people, respect boundaries, communicate clearly, and if something bites you, well, maybe bite back. Gently. Don't be weird about it. The council tried to get him to elaborate for approximately 3 hours. He refused, mostly because Calyx was getting bored and had started eyeing the decorative pillars like they might be edible. As I'm writing this, Marcus is still on Station Kepler 442, still growing vegetables, still living with what is now a full-grown Carthix, who has appointed herself his personal bodyguard and agricultural assistant. The pack visits regularly, and they've started bringing their own juveniles to learn from the soft pack brother, which is apparently what they call Marcus now. The galactic scientific community has given up trying to explain the bond using conventional xenobiology. Current theories range from humans emit some kind of pack-bonding pheromone we haven't discovered, to the universe itself is trolling us, to, honestly, at this point, let's just accept that humans are weird and move on. Dr. Zyloth, in her latest paper, put it best. After 5 cycles of intensive study, I have concluded that humans do not pack bond through any mechanism we can measure or understand. They pack bond through sheer stubborn insistence that pack bonding should be possible. They look at the impossible and say, "But what if, though?" And somehow, impossibly, it works. She followed this with a footnote that read, "I have observed human Marcus have a 15-minute argument with Calyx about proper fertilizer application techniques. Calyx does not speak any human language. Marcus does not speak Carthix. They communicated entirely through gestures, sounds, and what appeared to be pure exasperation. Both clearly understood each other. I have given up trying to explain this. And really, that's the whole story of humanity in the galactic community, isn't it? A species that looked at the vast, complicated, rule-bound universe and said, "Okay, but have you tried just being friendly?" A species that saw an apex predator biting their boot and thought, "Well, time for some gentle correction." A species that turned pack bonding from a specific biological mechanism into a lifestyle choice. The galaxy is still trying to figure out if humans are geniuses or lunatics. Marcus, meanwhile, is in Agricultural Bay 3, teaching Calyx not to eat the experimental soybeans, and wondering if anyone's figured out how to make a crystalline exoskeleton less sharp so she can participate in the station's new recreational sports league. Because of course there's a recreational sports league now. Humans insisted, and of course Calyx wants to join. Because if your pack brother does something, you do something. The galaxy wasn't ready for humans. And honestly, 5 cycles later, it still isn't. But at least the vegetables are growing nicely. And nobody bites Marcus Webb's boots without getting a gentle but firm correction. Pack rules, after all, even if you have to make them up as you go.